Hi, Chris.
Hi, Cameron. How are you?
Great, mate. Great to have you here again today. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.
Today, we're going to work through I guess, a recent example of some advice that we've given, that we gave to some clients that came in. Now, obviously, names have changed, ages have changed,
The theme's
financial
just
values
similar.
have changed. Yep.
Yep.
But the theme is similar. So let me just walk through the clients,
Sure.
and then we'll talk about some of the ideas that we had,
Sure.
some of the strategies that sort of we put together, some of the considerations for these particular clients. So, Les and Angela, not their real names, 67 and 63, not their real ages.
Yep.
Financial position, they own their home, owned homes worth $4 or $5 million. Going through a business sale. So sale of the business is proceeds are expected to be before tax and after costs around about $8 million.
Yep.
Angela has a testamentary trust.
Yep. Parents
So
passed away. Yep.
her parents passed away, so there's Australian shares. There's a bit of cash in the trust.
there. Yep.
Nearly close to $2 million there. They have their own SMSF, and inside the SMSF, there's a building that they operate the business from.
So that was part of the business. Yep.
So that's worth $4 million. There's cash in there of about $1 million. It's just been building up over time, I think.
Yeah, rental income. Yep.
They did a term deposit with the bank at some point, so there's another $1 million there in the SMSF.
Yep.
There's, from a family perspective, there's 3 adult children. Les's parents have dementia.
Yes.
So there's
In care
a
at
bit
the
of
moment.
bit of complexity. So total wealth, that's about 20 million thereabouts.
Yeah, correct.
Wealth outside the business is about $8 million.
Yep.
The current turnover in the business is about 3, and we'll get to that in a minute as to why that's important. And they're drawing, what were they drawing? 500,000.
It's about 500, yeah.
a year
So
from that.
taking some dividends out of the business. Yep.
Yeah. In terms of the things outside of the money, because as you know, we like to spend a lot of time
Correct.
here because it actually drives what we end up recommending. They were looking for a bit of freedom, weren't they? So
Yeah, well, they've been working really hard for a long time. So
yeah.
Yep.
So, and I think from what I recall, Angela, she watched her parents work really hard. They built wealth over time, which now she has as part of the testamentary trust.
Yep.
But it's fair to say that she said that they didn't really, to her way of thinking, probably didn't enjoy it as much as they should have.
Should have. Well, I think that came up when we were talking about the what was life like growing up question.
Yep.
And, how was money in that? And so obviously her parents have worked quite hard, were obviously clearly successful, but then both obviously passed away earlier than expected. And so, you have your working lives and we're all here working to get to a point and then we're going to enjoy it. She's seen the other side of that where that doesn't happen. And then she's left with the money in a testamentary trust, which is good and bad, like in some ways. But the lesson that she has taken from that is that life's short. We need to enjoy it.
Yeah. And that's what she wants for her and
absolutely.
Les.
Yeah, that's her greatest fear in a sense, is that they repeat the same mistakes. Yep.
Yeah. The other thing they talked about was their home as a family magnet. So having a beach home and a city place.
Yeah, well, I think with the kids being adults now, they're all travelling. I think lots of clients are in this situation where you've worked incredibly hard to get to where you are, and then now it's like, all right, well, we want to spend some more time with the kids. How do we use this word, but incentivize the kids to want to come home to a centralized place? And I think having spent a lot of their holiday time by the water at various points in their lives, it would be ideal for them to have, say, like a beach house where the kids can come with their partners, with the grandkids, and it becomes the family gathering place essentially. And that was really important to both of them.
Okay. They also talked about wanting to do some travel themselves.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. And then from a bloodline perspective, so they've got a testamentary trust at the moment. You want to talk us through that?
Well, it's just more around, I think, obviously Angela's parents giving her the funds through a testamentary trust and understanding that what that means from an asset protection perspective. Just being really cognizant of the fact that the kids are young adults, they're finding partners now. You want to make sure where possible that you can protect family assets from potential partner splits as much as you possibly can. Not that there's no perfect silver bullet solution, but to have some mechanism in place to provide for the kids and their lives without necessarily having to hand over large amounts of capital into the kids' names.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Something else they talked a little bit about was wanting their children to know that they have support, financial support. Yep. But and this often comes up when we're talking about this level plus of wealth. But want to make sure that there was no entitlement created.
Yep. I think that, again, comes back to when we're doing the life planning questions in the initial discussions, it's about, well, what are the things that are actually important to you? And obviously the kids are important and we want to help them, but it's about them having life lessons and learning that they need to, yes, you'll have support from your parents, but it's not going to be a handout, essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
So you need to learn to grow into whatever it looks like.
Yeah, so factoring that into any giving that's done. And then that extends itself into legacy.
Absolutely.
So obviously I think they want to look after Les's parents.
Correct.
But then also I think they also recognise that there's significant wealth that they perhaps might not use all themselves.
Well, it would be... Well, in some ways it would be difficult, and others you can understand why it might not be difficult to spend this level of wealth. But, Les has got a couple of family members that haven't been as successful as him that he would like to support. And then for both of them, I think they then realised that there's also some, what I guess, philanthropic endeavours that they would like to follow. So whether that be charitable donations or the way that they spend their time, I think in the long term, when we had the legacy discussions, those things came out. They've got more immediate, I guess, financial issues, not issues, but I guess questions around the sale of the business and how do they structure their tax position and how do they structure their financial assets.
Yep.
But once that's dealt with, then the legacy bucket, I guess, that we'll get to be talking about, what does that look like and how does that pool of money then become functional for the world? What's its purpose? Yeah, correct. Yep.
All right, that makes sense. Now, in terms of what they need to live off, I think they also wanted to make sure that they've got enough, because they're retiring, right, as part of this business sale. So is there enough income coming in for them to live the life that they're currently living?
Yeah, so we need about $500,000 a year.
Yep. Okay.
So that includes travel and all the looking after things, all the things like family holidays with the kids, all that sort of stuff. So,
all right, great. Thank you. I think that covers. Is there anything else that was
not
particular
really?
To them?
Yeah, I think that there might be some contextualized things that come up through the journey about their personal set of circumstances, but for the most part, it pretty much covers it.
All right.
So,
what was the advice?
Well,
what do we do next?
I guess first and foremost was, as we've talked about, the kind of the life planning piece. Yep. So the way that we tend to approach it is, I'm looking at the buckets first. So safety, lifestyle, and legacy buckets. So just doing a bit of a sense check to say, what is safety? So what does that look like?
What is safety for them?
Yeah, correct.
Yep. So and why would we do that? Why do we make sure that people feel safe?
Well, you can't do anything else until, I know Shane likes to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but you need to have a roof over your head that no one can take away from you, and enough money for your rainy day fund, whatever your rainy day fund looks like. So for some clients, that's $10,000. For some clients, it's $1 million. Like who knows what that number is? It's really just about making sure that is set. Now, I think for Angela and Les, the question here is around, where is home?
Yep.
So is it current home, or is it going to be the beach house? If that's what we want to call it, the beach house. Like, does that functionally then become home, or both? Yep. So which is where it ended up. Like ideally it would be both. And in a long-term sense, it's probably going to be downsizing of Melbourne into like a high-end apartment or townhouse or something, but then the predominance of time is likely to be more down the beach. But yeah, so sorting through that first and foremost, and then moving on to the lifestyle bucket, making sure that they've got enough in those assets. So if we think about the financial road mapping piece, just making sure that that was relatively clear what is needed in the lifestyle bucket so that they can live the life they want to live, take the $500,000 a year and, never really run out of money.
So can we just explore what that looks like a little bit? Because we're getting, I guess, partly to investment strategy here.
Yep.
So there is safety.
Yep.
Right. So the idea of the safety bucket is to make sure that there's enough money for them to help them feel safe, that they can draw on at any time to help suffice their living costs.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the lifestyle bucket, explain to me
Well,
what the purpose of that is. Is it a capital amount that goes in there? Is it, what does it do?
Essentially, it's a pool of money that allows you to have all the money you need for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So usually I would say to life expectancy, and not forever. How much is in there based on risk profile, how much money you need to draw, what's the asset structure in there, what are the return profiles of the underlying asset structure in there, and just making sure that when we model that out, that all of those aspects line up to be able to deliver them, what they need up until their late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
So think about it as in this context, it's almost your retirement pool.
Yeah.
So
in this context.
So what's the number that gets you to a point where you have what you need?
So in their case, do we want to walk through some of these numbers?
Sure. Yeah. More than happy to. Yeah.
All right. So I think conceptually, the way that we'd build this out is there may well be, in the safety bucket, there can be up to, I normally say 4 years worth of assets in the safety bucket.
Yep.
Right. So, and don't forget too, like that's generating a return, which is 5%, right? So term deposits.
Yep.
So the clients will draw down from their safety bucket to help their living costs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
The lifestyle bucket is almost the pool of money that is used to generate the return to then top up the safety bucket once the safety bucket is getting a bit low.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah?
Well, ideally, in a perfect world, the safety bucket very slowly diminishes because of all the income that's been generated from the assets, right? So it's almost like
you use the income that's been generated to top up the other bucket.
Correct. Yep. But it doesn't always work perfectly in that sense.
No, it depends on people's wealth. Like
correct.
What we're,
and
how
what you
quickly
take.
they draw down their assets.
Yep.
And,
So in this instance, half $500,000 a year, we're looking at around $1.5 to $2 million in what I would call cash or term deposits. So I'm looking at that and saying, well, at least $500,000 in at call cash, or maybe a couple $100,000 at call cash, and the rest of it into a high interest account that is at call, redeemable. And then a term deposit laddered strategy for the remainder of that, so that we're maximising the interest that we're getting on that cash. It's not, so what I would say is cash drag or lazy cash sitting in their account.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And then in the lifestyle bucket?
Yeah, so I guess then we're looking at, well, what's your risk profile? So in this context, given what the situation that they had been through all their life, in terms of, I would say most business owners are relatively risk takers because you're taking on that. But it's interesting because how people think about it is very different. So they think of themselves as quite conservative because they've got this business, it's generating this cash. But then, as you can see with the asset structure, it's gone into property, it's gone into term deposits, it's gone into cash, and it's gone into some Australian shares. So their view
which was inherited.
Yeah, their view on things is that they're quite conservative.
Okay.
Because the business is, I guess, inherently risky. But when you kind of step back and say, well, hang on, you've gone and stepped into like creating this business and you've got all this staff and there's all these risks there, you could look at that at two different sides of the coin. So look, ultimately we came back into the situation where, they're not that conservative that they want all their money in cash and term deposits because of the legacy piece. And realistically, at $500,000 a year, they probably don't have the perfect amount of capital to fulfill that forever and do all the legacy pieces and buy the holiday house.
Yeah.
With say like a 4% return rate. But so we ended up at a balanced position essentially.
Yeah. So and importantly here, let's just talk through what that means, right? So a balanced portfolio, the expected return over a balanced portfolio is probably circa 7.5 thereabouts, maybe 8. Depends on how things are going, obviously, and what the cash rate's doing. So you can reasonably say, let's keep the math simple for me right now. So let's say it was 8. And inflation's 3, right? So essentially the real rate of return is 5. If we're talking about generating $500,000 a year, and we'll just forget tax for the time being because we're going to talk about this complex tax strategy. If you're talking about generating, $500,000 a year, which is what they need to live off, then $10 million at 5% is going to give them the $500,000 a year that they can then use to top up their safety bucket. Right? That's just simple maths. The other thing that then happens is that they then if they're in a balanced portfolio and they achieve the 8% return average over 10, 15, 20 years, then the value of their money is going to keep pace with inflation.
Correct.
Yeah. That's the lifestyle and the safety aspect. Now, in Les and Angela's case, they actually have an additional $4 million on top of that as well. Right. Plus their house.
Yeah, correct.
So their choices become, that additional $4 million, which was what we would call the legacy component, their choices become, well, what do we do with that? Like, does that become the money that they then use to buy the beach home to bring the family together, which in and of itself is legacy.
His legacy, yeah. Well, and that's the idea, right? So that's essentially where that money went towards that. But then also noting that if there was additional, I guess, earnings or capacity, or as things change through time, that there would then subsequently be an additional, I guess, legacy pool of, I guess, what we call market or portfolio assets that would help fund those things, like say Les's parents, for example, any care needs, his siblings. So there was a wider, I guess, umbrella of legacy that was then broken down into another series of kind of sub accounts, essentially, that so when you're looking at this, the math is kind of similar, right, to the lifestyle bucket, where you're doing calculations of what's the end need and how do you work backwards to what's the capital amount that we need to put today, or if we don't have the capital amount today, how do we utilize either harvesting income or taking parts of growth off other pools of money and adding them into those buckets to get to a point over time where they're self-sustaining. Or that they meet the purpose that's intended. So it's about creating that wider plan where you can do all things.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
I think we've sort of uncovered the broader strategy now. So obviously why don't we talk a little bit more about perhaps some of the detail, and notwithstanding the fact the business hasn't sold yet.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Yep. So the $8 million that they're going to get from the business sale, what's some of the tax implications or some of the things we need to think about there?
Yeah, well, one of the things, I guess, one of the recent legislative changes, because there's probably there's a number of impacts here of the recent legislative changes, specifically around the small business CGT concessions, whereas currently, I guess for those who don't know, they're concessions that small businesses, if you meet the thresholds, allow you to gain access to some, I guess, additional tax benefits and an ability to contribute into super outside of your traditional contribution caps. So currently the way the rules stand is there's two tests. There's a turnover test and a net assets test. Turnover test is $2 million and the net assets test is $6 million. So they would clearly fail on the net assets test.
Yes.
And currently, the way the business turnover is, they would currently fail on the business turnover test.
Because the business turnover was $3 million.
Correct. So currently, as of this financial year or last financial year,
it's a good business.
It's a great
turning over $3 million and it's worth $8.
Yep, great business. So The recent legislative changes has lifted. Now these have only come in like maybe a few weeks ago. Lifted the turnover threshold to 10 mil. So one of the things that we need to be thinking about for these clients is that maybe we're looking to sell the business, but what's the tax implications on waiting 11 months to sign the contracts versus doing it now? So so doing that analysis on, is it valuable based on the changes essentially?
Which is where we're up to at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what we're working through currently. So,
and I guess the other thing here is too, like both Les and Angela are over 60, so they can. How old was Les?
67.
Yeah. So that then allows them the capability to be able to start to draw income from their super.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've got $6 million in their super fund, but there is $4 million of the $6 million that sits in
the property.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of been
What's happening with that property? Sorry,
it needs to be sold essentially, primarily because I was about to say the issue with putting the fund into pension mode currently is that you've got an illiquid asset, and if you start a pension, you have to take your pension minimums.
Yeah.
So it becomes problematic if you've got this asset that you can't sell and you can't meet your pension minimums, and we've got all sorts of issues with compliance within the SMSF.
So I think initially it's probably going to be okay because what's it make up 2/3 of the total fund, but it depends on what it yields, of course.
Yeah, correct.
Because they can use the cash that they've got to start to draw it out.
Yep.
But over time, that becomes more problematic, and probably overall, it's about how does this whole thing fit into our overall investment strategy to be able to generate the $500,000 a year we want, plus have the legacy.
Correct.
How does that all fit in?
And I think this has been, so again, coming back to the initial discussion about, financial situation, goals, dreams and aspirations, issues and blockers, this has been a blocker. It's just been so complex, and
it is complex.
The business and the fact that the property's in the super fund. Should we start a pension? Or maybe not. Are we going to sell the business? Are we going to keep continuing to work? There's lots of those considerations. I think it's just been put in the too hard basket, and they haven't had the advice that they needed, the holistic, comprehensive advice to be able to distill it to bring it all together, to provide the clarity. Yep.
Yeah, that's a. No, I think. Well, I mean, look, that's why people come to us. That's why we have a business. That's why we have jobs. Is because we're very good. Yep. Can I say, very good at doing that for people.
Yep.
Now, one of the other implications that I'm just thinking about is they've got $6 million in their fund in the SMSF. So Div 296.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So I think. Again, these are the. So we've talked about the legislative changes of the small business concessions, but then there's also been the legislative changes that seem to be continually coming through at the moment, particularly for people in this wealth position, are quite impactful.
Yeah.
And again, it's about assessing. So that started 1 July this year. We've got until the middle of June next year to potentially make any changes if we want to, but it's really going to be dependent on what the return outcomes in the fund are. So I know I'm getting really technical here in terms of not necessarily explaining what Division 296 is for people, but effectively it's an additional 15% tax on earnings in a fund north of $3 million, proportionally worked out of earnings over the $3 million. It's
again, Chris, this is why we have jobs, because it's complex.
Again, much like the small business concessions, we're working through it. Like, we're actually not going to be able to figure out what we do until we do our tax planning session next year, or the end of this fiscal year. But it is a consideration, a significant consideration, and we need to work out what's the best path for that. Now, off the top of your head, you would look at it and say, all right, you're going to pay an additional 15% on at least the portion that's in the accumulation component. To your point before about complex tax structures, is then we need to make that as a direct comparison against what it would be if we took it out.
That's right.
Of superannuation.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And currently, there's no it would have been easier to have this conversation 12 months ago, but currently there's no tax effective structures in their personal world. So typically we'd be looking at, family trusts with potentially corporate beneficiaries.
Yeah, that's right. But thank you to the current government, we have no clarity on what that actually is going to look like. So it makes it very, very hard, current government, if you're listening, to help anyone, not just people in this position, plan.
Yep. So again, we're in limbo essentially. Yeah. So we've had the consultation paper that came out, a couple of weeks ago. Who knows? The consultation period was like 16 days or something, which is for something so complex, just unfathomable for me. But let's see where that lands. Wherever it lands, we're going to have a solution. It's just going to be about working out how do we minimise the amount of tax that these particular clients are going to pay. Yeah,
and so moving on from the strategy to probably more from an estate planning perspective, it's clear to me based on this set of numbers that it'd be highly likely that Les and Angela will pass on to the next life, leaving a whole bunch of money in this life.
You would hope so. Yes.
So that being the case, do we then how do we think about that? So because I know part of this is challenging for them, given that they don't want their children to have access to all the money now. So what are they doing in that context?
Yeah, well, I think again that's further complicated by the fact that the family trust stuff isn't clear. So that probably would have been a little bit easier had we, again, 12 months ago. That's a bit simpler in terms of who are the beneficiaries, who's the trustee of the trust to have control over the assets so that it's not, anyway.
There is a testamentary trust though.
Well, yes, that's what I was,
Oh, sorry.
But
go on.
Getting there. But in terms of, using the testamentary trust for, I guess, the legacy aspects. So again, this is why I come back to this safety, lifestyle, legacy bucket so important, because the way my brain works is I think about this in overlays. So we've got like a life planning overlay, first and foremost. That's the lens that we look at. The way I visualize this, it's like plastic sheets dropping down from the roof. So there's like multiple of these plastic sheets. So
another one of Chris's great analogies there. Thank you,
Chris. It's just how my brain works. But anyway, so there's the life planning overlay is probably first and most important. Then you've got the bucketed approach. So where do the assets fit within those buckets? Then we're looking down and within those buckets, what's the financial strategy? And then you've got another overlay, or what's your asset mandate in terms of how's the asset structure? Then there's another one of what's your actual investment selection? And then I guess you've got sort of like an income cash flow sort of one on top of that. And then finally there's the product, which is always last, but that's just execution of all the other layers that we've come in. So I've looked at it and said, all right, the testamentary trust needs to go into the legacy bucket for that reason.
That's its purpose.
It's exactly, that's its purpose. And it's the provisions for beneficiaries is appropriate enough that if we need to, we can loan money to the kids so that, if something happens, then the money's back into the testamentary trust. It stays within the family. So I'll make some assumptions here, but you can't add new money to a testamentary trust because you, I guess, trip up the tax law and you can muddy the waters on the ability to distribute to those beneficiaries in a tax effective manner. So really it's then about, well, in the current climate, where we've just got to redo, I guess, their estate plan, wills, powers of attorney, that if Les and Angela both passed, that the assets that they do currently have would go to the kids in testamentary trusts.
Yep.
I know. So we've done that through a testamentary trust for each of the three kids, and we've made sure that each of those children isn't the sole trustee of each of the trusts. To make sure that there's no sense of control from a family court perspective. So you're just doing as much as you possibly can to bloodline protect effectively.
Chris, is there anything else with Les and Angela that you wanted to explain?
I guess it just depends on how far you want to go down the rabbit hole, but there's lots of things in there. I guess SMSF, asset structure, what does that potentially look like? Yeah, I think for me, I guess the way my brain works is that and it's easy for me to say because I've kind of put the financial pieces of the puzzle together where I broadly know how that they're going, like they will be okay.
Yep.
How the structure is going to work. It's for me, it's about, well, those legacy pieces that were or sort of almost on delay. How do we supercharge those, I suppose, or give those more energy and light?
Yep.
Because they're the things that, in terms of the conversations that we have with clients, I'm talking about aha moments the other day that spark joy in people.
Yep.
That's where we want your energy to go, because all of those overlays you pay us to look after.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So we're here to make sure that the structure's right, there's transparency, you know what's going on, but then you get to focus your energy and life on the things that actually mean a lot to you. So that's like, for me, that's kind of where I think the future goes.
Perfect, mate. Thank you. I think that's been a really good exploration of this particular client.
Yep.
And obviously we can't go into the details around the strategy just yet because it's still being formulated and the government's still hasn't given us is shifting the waters a bit.
Yep.
Anyway, but yeah, thanks for taking us through that. That was excellent, and hopefully that gives people a bit of an understanding about what we do and how we think.
It's how we approach it.
How we approach it.
Just the complexities that I guess maybe some people don't necessarily think that are there, but are there, I suppose.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Gav.
Appreciate you coming in.
No worries.
We'll see you next month.
See you soon.